Hey everyone, welcome back to Grace Note Forge. So today I'm going to be cleaning up a few batches of skull pendants that I recently cast in bronze. And since I'm working on a bit of a variety here, I thought it would be a good time to share a pretty useful tip for batch processing. So each one of these skulls has these little sprue marks on the back of them from where it was cast, and those areas need to be cleaned up. So normally if I'm just doing one or two pieces at a time, I would just do this by hand using the micromotor. But for larger batches like this, it's definitely worth it to find a good way to hold them. And unfortunately these really don't fit very well in any kind of pliers, so I'm going to have to find a better solution. And this is where some moldable plastic can really come in handy. So there's a lot of different kinds of this stuff online, but they all seem to kind of work the same. So to heat it up, you just use a little bit of hot water, and it starts to become really pliable and moldable in your hands. And at that point, you can just kind of mold it in your hands and form it around your piece to hold it. Now in the bag, they come in these little plastic pellets, and once they're all heated up, they end up kind of sticking together. So I'm just going to toss a couple tablespoons of this in a little glass dish, and then I'm going to use some hot water from the kettle to heat them up. The water temp is about 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and it really only takes a couple seconds to start working. And you can tell because they start to become pretty translucent and also start sticking together. It's at this point that you can use a metal pick or something to clump them together and pull them out of the water, and start molding it with your hands. And obviously it's still going to be a little hot, so try to be careful with that, but now it's ready to be formed around our piece to hold it in place. And there's a lot of different ways to do this. A really common way is to just kind of press them in the jaws of like a ball vise or something, and that usually works really great. But I'm actually going to use this stuff to make some custom soft jaw pliers. So to do that, I'm going to use this old set of, I think they're called hog ring pliers. And I think you use them for like these little metal staples or something. But I went with these because I like the shape of the jaw. It kind of already curled in and had a little bit of a taper to them. And I ended up just modifying them a little bit by using a diamond burr to carve these little grooves on either end of both jaws. And the idea is to take some bits of that thermoplastic and just form it around the jaws. And those little grooves should help to hold the plastic in place once it cools back down and becomes hard again. So while the plastic's still nice and warm, I'm just going to break off maybe a 1/2 inch ball of it and begin forming it around one of the jaws of the pliers. And I'm not really looking to form it into any specific shape or anything at this point. I just want it to be pretty tight to the jaw itself, so I'm kind of pressing it in on itself quite a bit and just making a nice big glob on the end of it. And once that's looking good, I can just break off another piece from the dish and do the same on the other jaw. And both sides were still relatively warm at this point. I'd say I have maybe a couple of minutes of working time each. You can see as it cools down, it becomes less translucent, and once they're fully cold, they actually turn back to white. But before that happens, and while I still have a little bit of heat in them, I'm just going to grab one of my skulls that I'm working on and start pressing it in place. So it really doesn't take that much pressure. They're still relatively soft, and I'm just kind of lightly pinching it, but also lining up the area that I'm going to be working on. I'm also leaving a little bit of space in between the two jaws. That way when it's cold, I can kind of apply constant pressure and really make sure the piece is nice and tight in there. So once that's looking good and nicely lined up, I can just set them down and let them kind of air cool. You can dunk them in cold water if you want to cool them faster, but it really doesn't take that much time. And once they're fully cool, they turn back to solid white and are now much harder to the touch than before. So these are pretty nicely formed to the skull now, and you can see it actually grips onto it a bit with just one jaw. So now I can just line them back up in that little groove, and I really don't need that much pressure to have a really nice firm grip for working on these. And what's really nice is that these are really easy to just pop off as you work and just change them out for a different pair. So I'll typically have a few sets of these on my bench while I'm working on a few different batches. And one other quick tip for this is that if you want to just quickly change the shape of these without having to make like a whole new pair, you really don't need to use water for it. You can just take a heat gun and kind of lightly go over the surface of it, and the heat will only really affect that kind of top layer of them, so you can easily press it to fit whatever you want kind of on the fly, and just change that out as you go. So when using these, now I can just rest the pliers up against my bench pin and keep my fingers away from the sharp burrs while I work. And whenever I'm ready to change to a different design, I could just pop them off and put on a new pair. So I'm sure this technique works for a lot of different kinds of pliers as well. So let me know what you think of this tip down in the comments. And if you have any other tips on batch processing, feel free to share those as well. But that's it for now. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.